This Week in Consumer Electronics is a weekly trade magazine for professionals in the consumer electronics field. It's called Twice by those of us in the know, and we're always delighted to have our next guest, their editor-in-chief from Twice magazine on, Steve Smith. Steve, welcome back. How are you doing?
Thank you. Doing well. I was happily surprised to see your large studio here.
Yes, we have quite the gathering with several staff members, and of course, I'm glad you mentioned that because all of our video, or all of our interviews are also on videotape, so you can come and see what Steve looks like, more than just a picture on the website, but actually watch him speaking, and all of the guests.
Well, it kind of frightened me when I saw my shots from CES, but I won't hold that against you. It's my makeup person.
Yeah, exactly. Fire your makeup person. Well, first of all, what brings you to the CEA Washington Forum?
It's always been the last several years this has changed from being an HD TV event, and they always had a spring meeting, I think about 10 or 15 years ago, and this is a good time to come back to see the people who are members of CEA, both the people who run the group and the membership, 3 months after CES, to get their take on what's going on in the marketplace. But this is a lot more than that. The discussions here today are, tomorrow we'll be discussing HDTV and the ramifications of February 2009 and also the greening aspect and all of that. But today is all about free trade, which unless you're, they're even saying that the message of free trade hasn't been really pushed to the American people as much on the pro side as in the negative side, where we're all going to lose our jobs because they're all going to move to China. Yeah. And I think CEA is trying to balance that and saying, well, wait a minute, free trade does provide some jobs and opportunity here. So that's why we're here. Government's here, everybody's here.
How would you describe, Steve, the whole free trade situation anyway? I mean, just on an objective basis for our audience who says, okay, we hear a lot about it, but what exactly is it?
I can only talk from the consumer electronics industry perspective. And if you want to buy a consumer electronics that is made in a U.S. factory, designed in a U.S. factory with only U.S. components and only running U.S. software.
By U.S. workers.
By U.S. workers, you wouldn't be able to find that. And that, for the consumer electronics industry, is not a new phenomenon. What I think the Consumer Electronics Association is trying to show is that free trade is not all of what Lou Dobbs is saying and not all of what the most strident free traders are saying. It's a mixture where you'll take designs from the United States, software from the United States, and the marketing power of the people in the United States and have it manufactured someplace else. What we're gaining is innovation. What we may be losing is certain types of manufacturing jobs. That's what came out this morning, and it's another one of those issues. It's not black and white. It's gray.
I think a lot of folks, especially here in our nation's capital, are thinking in terms of a balancing act is really kind of what it boils down to. But, yes, of course, we need to trade in many ways, whether it's goods, services, et cetera, especially consumer electronics goods, which is what we cover, you and us. And then yet, how do you strike that appropriate balance so that we as Americans and companies, American companies, can stay competitive and so forth? It is tough.
One of the big issues that was, well, I'm not sure how big an issue it is, but one of the things that was discussed by one of the pro-free trade people that we heard this morning was that the consumer is of two minds of this. As a consumer, they love the value of a relatively inexpensive iPod or DVD player, et cetera, but then they feel guilty. They say maybe there should be barriers or there should be something to help out our own economy and the workers here. I think that there's a split in the message. I think that my own personal feeling is that the Consumer Electronics Association and industry in general are very, very concerned that if the Democrats do take over Congress and they do take over the White House, or just take over Congress and can override a presidential veto, then all of our trading agreements will change. I'm no politician, and I know I'm just a regular guy on that. I don't buy it. I don't think the world's going to change overnight.
There'll certainly be attempts to make that happen in many areas, no doubt.
I'll put it this way, and I'm dating myself. In the mid-'80s, late '80s, when General Electric bought RCA, they asked Jack Welch the day that they were going to buy it, will we see VCR manufacturing come back to the United States? And he basically said, no pun intended, that ship has already sailed.
Yeah.
So that, even though General Electric, the biggest manufacturer in the world, was going to do something, it didn't happen.
And I think we all, as Americans, take pride in turning over that occasional product, and it says "Made in USA."
Yes.
But you hit the nail on the head early on. There are so few, and that's just the very nature of consumer electronics, which is also why.
That's the nature of consumer electronics.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be that way for ballpoint pens and window shades, but you and I are experts in consumer electronics, and that's been like that for a while. It's a complete mixture of trying to find the best people and the best resources to build the products.
It also kind of explains how you and I and our collective staffs literally travel the world to bring our audiences the latest in consumer electronics, because we have to. It's where they're coming from.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I always tell friends and family, cover the consumer electronics industry and see the world.
There you go. And that's exactly what's happening, especially with our staff. You want to visit twice.com, TWICE, for This Week in Consumer Electronics. And, of course, you'll also hear, by the way, our daily feature podcasts that are highlighted right there at twice.com. We're delighted to work with Steve and his team on that to bring you even further into tomorrow. Steve, as always, thanks for spending a few minutes with us. It's
My
always
pleasure.
fun to catch up with you around the world as well.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. We're back with more as Into Tomorrow continues. I'm Dave Graveline. We're at the CEA Washington Forum. Don't go away.